because this is who we are. Minnesotans believe in the rule of law, and Minnesotans believe in the dignity of all people. We're a place where there's room for everybody. We're an island of decency in a country being driven towards cruelty. We will remain an island of decency, of justice, of community, of peace.
Tim Walz really has quit the fight, and he is making concessions now to the president and doing really what he should have been doing all along. And the arrests have started.
We're now under arrest. Please sit down and wait for instruction.
And listen, for all of you anti-ICE protesters out there, listen, y'all need to just go the f home. Go home. Or better yet, go to work. Meanwhile, there's no police around to get these protesters off the street. Like, where's the police at? Where's the fucking police?
So it looks like there's going to be some changes coming in Minnesota. Governor Walz and President Trump have spoken and come to some kind of an agreement or an understanding of what each wants from the other, or what each expects, what President Trump expects from the governor and the mayor there in Minnesota, and what they would like in return from President Trump. So you're going to hear a lot of talk in the media that Donald Trump is backing down or backtracking from his stance on this ICE crackdown in Minneapolis. But I think the reality of this situation is the president is willing to make some concessions, maybe pull the Border Patrol agents out of Minneapolis in exchange for full cooperation from the Minneapolis Police Department, which you think would be a no-brainer that they wouldn't even have to bargain for. But if the governor and the mayor are willing to provide that police support, the border agents really aren't needed, and they can go back to doing their regular job. So not really a concession by the president. It's just putting in place law enforcement that should have been there all along. So no need for Border Patrol if the Minneapolis and St. Paul police are going to get involved and keep the streets clear and protect businesses and, you know, do the things that normally a police department should do. So Minneapolis right now, kind of a unique situation in America. Lawlessness seems to be the norm. And even though they talk about being peaceful, responsible citizens, which most probably are, but the ones that ICE has to deal with on a daily basis there in Minneapolis are not representative of that. So how did we get to this point? Well, a lot of this began with Tim Walz and the position that he took against the administration and against ICE.
My fellow Minnesotans, what's happening in Minnesota right now defies belief.
It really does.
News reports simply don't do justice to the level of chaos and disruption and trauma the federal government is raining down upon our communities. 2,000 to 3,000 armed agents of the federal government have been deployed to Minnesota. Armed, masked, undertrained ICE agents are going door to door, ordering people to point out where their neighbors of color live. They're pulling over people indiscriminately, including U.S. citizens, and demanding to see their papers. And at grocery stores, at bus stops, even at our schools, they're breaking windows, dragging pregnant women down the street, just plain grabbing Minnesotans and shoving them into unmarked vans, kidnapping innocent people with no warning.
Occupation of Minnesota long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement. It's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of our state. We know that the potential to further inflame tensions is high, and to Minnesotans,
but he's going to do it anyway.
There's a difference. We want calm and peace and normalcy back to our lives. They want chaos. Minnesota and our local law enforcement, as you have seen, have done everything possible to de-escalate.
False.
Local media has reported extensively on the cooperation to de-escalate this situation. We've seen deadly violence from federal agents again and again and again. But in contrast to that, on these frozen streets, what you witnessed yesterday was the best of Minnesotans, peacefully exercising their First Amendment rights. Despite the horrific acts by this federal government, Minnesotans are standing up for the rule of law. They're protesting loudly and urgently, but peacefully. And I call on all Americans to see the decency that this state is exhibiting and the horrific cruelty, unprofessional, absolute abomination that is passing for what these ICE agents are doing on our streets.
So Tim Walz continues to claim that the protests in Minnesota are peaceful, and he could not have any harsher words for law enforcement. The ICE officers and the Border Patrol agents there trying to arrest the illegal immigrants there. And, you know, it's his sanctuary city policies that create this whole mess. The fact that they don't cooperate with federal law enforcement and they don't turn over violent illegal immigrants to ICE from their jails. They'd rather release them into the neighborhoods. They create this problem. They force ICE and Border Patrol to go into the community looking for these people. And very harsh words from the governor towards the federal law enforcement there in Minnesota. So he is no fan of theirs for sure, but he also doesn't give a realistic view of what's actually taking place in Minneapolis. It's a very distorted view of the facts.
We have got children in Minnesota hiding in their houses, afraid to go outside. Many of us grew up reading that story of Anne Frank. Somebody's going to write that children's story about Minnesota.
The Holocaust Museum fired back on X, saying the events in Minnesota and the systematic murder of 6 million Jews are totally different. They called it false equivalencies for political purposes and deeply offensive, especially with rising anti-Semitism.
So another, really just offensive, disgusting statement by Tim Walz, comparison of Minnesota children hiding in their homes from ICE, comparing that to the story of Anne Frank during Nazi Germany of World War II. The Holocaust Museum fired back at him, as they should. And, it's just hard to understand how someone in a position like Tim Walz would even make reference to something like that. It disqualifies him as someone who should even be governor of a state. It's just insane rhetoric and extremely offensive rhetoric that a governor, any governor, should not partake in. And I don't know why he's still the governor of that state. I don't know why the people of Minnesota have not demanded that he resign. But that's just a terrible thing for him to say.
Now, yesterday, the president said he had constructive calls with Governor Walz and Mayor Fry. Writing afterwards, Governor Tim Walz called me with the request to work together with respect to Minnesota. It was a very good call, and we actually seem to be on a similar wavelength. I told Governor Walz that I would have Tom Homan call him and that what we are looking for are any and all criminals that they have in their possession.
So it looks like a productive phone call between the president and Governor Walz. I think President Trump really wants to see an end to some of this chaos. But keep in mind, the chaos in Minneapolis is because of the protesters and the lack of police presence there. It is not due to the presence of ICE or the operation that they are conducting, arresting illegal immigrants. This goes on in other cities that cooperate with ICE, and the law enforcement cooperates with rioters, and they don't let things like this get out of hand. I don't see this as a win for Governor Walz. I see this as a concession, and President Trump really just bringing law and order to Minneapolis, which right now doesn't exist. You have the federal agents trying to enforce law and order, and you have the local law enforcement AWOL. But now there appears to be some kind of an agreement and law enforcement has become active, and people have begun getting arrested for doing these violent protests and interfering with ICE operations there in Minneapolis.
And last night, agitators continued their campaign of targeting hotels where they think immigration agents are staying and making as much noise as possible to prevent agents from getting arrested. Agitators gathered outside a hotel in Maple Grove where they think Bovino was staying. A video shows officers taking people into custody. We are working to firm up the number of arrests. Now, DHS claims that threats against ICE officers has now gone up more than 8,000%.
If President Trump does not get what he wants here, nothing's going to change. And it's up to the governor and the mayor now to fix this situation, stop these protests, get these people under control. There's a lot of talk now that this is even outside influence outside of Minnesota that's funding these things. So not organic, not genuine, and not anything really that should be called protesting. This is not peaceful. This is not what we would think of as protesting. This is more violence again and intimidation of federal law enforcement there in Minneapolis. So let me know what you guys think. Who wins this standoff between the president, the governor, and the mayor? And are changes coming, or are we going to just continue to see more of the same? One thing's for sure, I think if President Trump doesn't get what he wants here, things are not going to change. And things are only going to get harder for the governor and the mayor once Tom Homan arrives. And it's a good opportunity for them to make some changes now, because the sanctuary policies that they have in place here in Minnesota are not working for the people of Minnesota. They're not working for the people of Minneapolis. And it's time to shut these people down and restore law and order to their cities. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and I'll see you on the next video.